Hello. Yep. So I'm Alice Moore, and I am a senior software engineer at GP. And I've been there for about 3 years now, helping to transform the billing space and also helping to build out our team here in Northern Ireland. So for those of you who don't know, GP is a leader in the global employment market, and they've been helping companies to hire and manage their global teams for over a decade now. So essentially what that means is if someone is starting their business in, say, New York, but they know that all the best software developers are here in Northern Ireland, GP can help them to start building that business and handle things like HR, legal, payroll, compliance, all those sort of things. And the market for this has really exploded over the past few years, pretty much since companies realized that we can do more work at home in our pajamas than we can taking hundreds of tea breaks a day in the office. And because of that, GP is a 100% remote-first company. We believe that work is no longer a place that you go. It's something that can be done anywhere. And we've been really evolving with this trend and have embarked on a modernization journey to continue supporting this growth. So today I'll just cover how GP has been transforming and specifically how my team has used simplicity to run on a global scale and by keeping our costs and run times as low as possible through the use of serverless technology. And I'll also cover how building relationships outside of the development team and making that journey together can really help us to accelerate growth at the rapid pace that's needed for true globalization. So in its first few years, GP was one of the fastest growing companies in America. And over the past decade, they've built up a portfolio of thousands of customers and hundreds of partners worldwide. And by combining our teams of HR and legal and compliance with our technology, we've been building out what we call our global growth platform. And this is essentially the foundation to build and deliver our products, which will then enable our customers to start building their own global teams within minutes. So to set the scene, I'm sure it's something everyone is familiar with. We started with a monolith that all the development teams were contributing into and working on simultaneously. And this really led to an increased cognitive burden. There was such a significant amount of business knowledge and technical knowledge needed to work in there. And there was really no distinct boundaries around any of that business logic. So if you were working in one area, you needed that overarching knowledge of the whole system. On top of that, we also had a slow-moving release cycle. So we were working in 2-week increments, which really meant if you missed that first deploy up to UAT for testing, really then it would be 3 weeks before you could actually get that feature deployed out to production. And obviously our product autonomy was also suffering because of that. We didn't have the feedback cycle that we needed. Our product discovery and experimentation was really restricted by that. So we had to make some changes to really start building out our platform. So we started by focusing on reducing that cognitive burden. We aligned our domains to teams and focused on domain-driven design. So it meant that we had clear boundaries that we were working within. And within that, then, we used event-driven architecture to help create smaller workloads, which were then managed in our AWS accounts and helped us to provide that continuous delivery. And then obviously that meant that we could manage our own release cycles and provide that perfect environment for test and learn and continually iterating on what we had built. So now we have product delivery teams which have clear managed bounded contexts. And that means that we can really focus on the business and product strategy. And by working with those business and product teams, we can increase our operational efficiency, we can continue to rapidly expand, and we can provide that immediate customer value. So the billing process was one of the first domains that we really pulled out of that monolith, and it's the perfect example of where having the right technology enables that solid foundation to operate on a global stage. And we really had the opportunity to build this from the ground up, maximizing our operational efficiency, keeping our costs and runtimes low, but also offering the scalability that's needed for pricing thousands of bills month on month. So what we did was we worked directly with the business to really break the flow down to its bare bones. We had a series of example mapping workshops where we worked with templates like this to really map out that business logic and how that translates into our code. It meant that we were keeping all of our processes really streamlined and we weren't overcomplicating any of the logic. And also working directly with the business really gave us that first-hand understanding of how we were actually contributing to the organization's vision and goals. So once we had our example mapping done, we then mapped those into feature files using Cucumber. So This really acted as a source of truth for the business logic that everyone could refer back to. And it sat alongside our code, which meant that we had that commit history, which could act as like an audit log then. So it's really straightforward. You can see an example of what a feature file looks like here. So your example mapping story becomes the scenario, and then your story rules translate into a given when then format, and that becomes the steps that your code actually processes. And then your example scenarios become your test data. And it's all written in really business-friendly language, so that helps to break down those barriers, and it means everyone can contribute to it. And like I said, because it sits alongside our code, it means that adding any new logic or any new rules, it's really straightforward, and it has that accountability to back it up. And it means that new pricing can be added and deployed within a matter of hours, accelerating our time to market. And because it's an established pattern, which is easily repeatable, it enables true flexibility for our customers, because it means if they see any new products that we've launched or want to avail of any new pricing, then they can add that within minutes, and there's no concerns for reliability or compliance issues. So onto the architecture side of things, we really focused on event-driven architecture with domain-driven design at the core of what we were doing. So a lot of good reasons for this. Because we were extracting from the monolith, but they still had events that we wanted to consume, it meant that we were able to consume those events and stay loosely coupled to it. And because the events are easily understood and there's a shared understanding of it, it means that we could continue to involve the business while we were designing that system, and they can contribute to what was being passed from domain to domain. So from the start, our focus was really keep it simple. Like I said, we have those events coming from the monolith, so we were consuming them, and we just had queues that then triggered Lambdas to do things like saving and updating our contextual data. So that was stuff like customer information, team member information, that sort of thing, and that was all in the interest of eventual consistency. And then we had a Lambda that done the actual pricing logic. So by keeping the architecture really simple and focused on those higher order services, it meant that we were really reducing that cognitive burden on the team. And by keeping our Lambdas small and focused on one task at a time, it reduced that domain knowledge that was needed to work within it compared to working within the monolith. So one of the obvious benefits of serverless is the scalability, and we utilize this in as many ways as possible. So we set concurrency on our Lambdas, so we were really able to embrace that parallelism. So if we could price one bill in a second, we could price lots of bills in that same second, and there'd be no impacts to the performance or the reliability of the system. We chose to use DynamoDB over a traditional relational database, again, just because Dynamo is such a massive enabler for scale. It has auto-scaling, and with the on-demand capacity, it meant that we could keep our runtime costs really low by only scaling to peak capacity whenever the traffic is high. And on top of that, we use global secondary indexes to control our access patterns and optimize our queries. So we were returning the data that we needed without having any negative impacts on performance. So you can see from these graphs, bill pricing is pretty clearly defined peaks and troughs throughout the month. So there's two real main spikes throughout the month, and serverless and Dynamo is perfect for this because it means that we can scale up when it's needed and we don't need to worry about any sort of increased latency. And then the rest of the month, it can lie pretty much dormant, costing us virtually nothing. On the other hand, the contextual data you can see is pretty sporadic. But again, the good thing about serverless and Dynamo is that we don't need to predict that traffic. We don't need to know about it. We don't really need to care, essentially. Dynamo can just provision the capacity whenever it's needed. So billing is obviously a pretty sensitive area to work in. If you price one bill wrong, that's pretty bad. If you price hundreds of bills wrong, that is just catastrophic. If we overcharge or undercharge our customers, that was really going to destroy those customer relationships. It'll be a massive hit on our reputation professionally, and it'll just be a huge financial headache for everyone that's involved. And the remediation effort around it would just be astronomical. And our relationship that we've been building up with the business teams could start to spiral once that seed of doubt started to get in. So we had to be sure that our calculations were correct and that we had a tangible way of reassuring the business of that. So what we were able to do was run in parallel with the existing flow, and we called it our parity checker. So this is sort of what the dashboard would have initially looked like, just checking what matched and what didn't match. So what we were able to do was take the bill that was actually priced through the existing system and then compare it to what ran through ours. And when we were doing this, we were really actively hoping to fail. We were looking for problems. We wanted to work them all out. So as we started to ramp up the amount of customers running through this, small issues started to come out, things like rounding errors or bad currency exchanges. But it all really helped to strengthen that trust with the business and show them that they could really rely on our system. And it also gave us the opportunity to work out any bugs in a much safer environment. We had the opportunity to fail fast and to fail forward, meaning that we could figure things out before we were in that position of actually being live. So again, keeping things simple, we were able to consume the bill event with the final calculations on it. And again, using those EDA principles, all we had to do was add a queue and a Lambda. So running in serverless was a massive driver for being able to run in parity like this. Normally, it would have been too much overhead to run two systems at once. But we were able to keep our costs down to literally a few dollars a month with such a simple architecture. And it gave us that opportunity to refine and optimize, and we could maximize our performance and also test our scalability ahead of time. And then our focused workloads and our automated pipelines really helped those turnaround times for fixes and deploys. If we had a bug fix to get out, if we really needed to, it could be done within minutes. It helped us to embrace that test and learn mindset. We could iterate quickly on each release, so we were constantly refining and improving what we'd built. And obviously that feeds into our aim at the beginning to increase our continuous delivery abilities as well as our product autonomy. We'd remove those restrictions from the monolithic release cycle. It meant that we weren't missing deployments and having to wait weeks to get stuff out there. Instead, we were fully in charge of our pipelines. We could release small changes with a much greater frequency and avoid those risky big bang releases. So our initial plan was to enable a subset of customers. We wanted to start small and ramp up, make sure we didn't impact every single customer at once. So phase one was to enable one country, then phase two onto 50% of customers, and phase three at some point in the future, 100% of customers. So we worked with a billing specialist who priced one bill, just to make sure that we weren't going to absolutely break the entire system. That was all good. So we moved on to 100 bills, again, no issues. So then on to phase one, the first country. So you can see the results really speak for themselves here. We cut the processing time of bills really, really significantly. Compared to the previous system, it was a time saving of 94%. So on a per bill basis for the whole billing process, that was down from minutes to seconds to price a bill. And that's really because we had that contextual data that was constantly saving, updating when events are firing. So it's ready and waiting when we need it. And then our pricing Lambda just has that one job. So we're keeping that really low runtime. And again, parallelism comes into play here. So we're pricing multiple bills at once, increasing our time savings and leading to such an impressive outcome. So as you can imagine, our initial plan was totally scrapped. The business was 100% ready and confident to roll out to all customers within a month. And we really recognized that the trust that we had built with them was key to the ongoing success, not only of our system, but also for driving change within GP. And we wanted to find more efficient and cost-effective ways to continue automating things to create more time savings for the business and also more opportunities for us to innovate. So once we were running alone, obviously the parity checker was redundant. We had nothing to compare to anymore. So it was time to evolve our system and see what we could do next. So what we wanted to do was introduce further automation so that we could run pretty much on our own with minimal intervention from business and us. So we took the idea of the parity checker, but this time we were comparing to bills from the previous month. So month on month bills are pretty much the same, bar a couple of payments like bonuses or commissions. So it's really easy to compare to see if there's any issues there. So again, keeping it super simple, it's another queue and a Lambda. And we're just comparing to our own bills that we've priced now from the previous month, looking for any discrepancies that are outside of acceptable bounds. And then we were able to take that eventing one step further and create this nice business-friendly report. So it was just showing things like failed bills, any errors that happened, any mismatches in the prices. And it just meant instead of the business teams having to review all of the bills at once, it meant that they could price their bills within minutes and then just check the corresponding report. And on top of this, we also utilized monitoring and alerting in New Relic to really get that observability. And it meant that the development team were getting notified of any problems, and we were able to proactively reach out to the business teams and help them to rectify that as soon as possible. And then in terms of the ongoing health of the system, we use our SCORE process to utilize well-architected as a practice. So this is a monthly activity that we do, and it's a cross-team activity. So there's other teams in GP on a similar sort of journey, using serverless technologies, all that sort of stuff. So we all get together once a month, chat about all of our learnings, any pitfalls that we've encountered, any improvements that we can make. So we're sort of monitoring things like our workload runtimes and our cold starts and identifying areas where we can improve that performance and continue delivering that business value to our customers. We monitor for any system failures or any incidents that happen throughout the month to make sure that we can quickly and securely recover from those. And we're also keenly aware of our costs, and we're always seeking to eliminate any negative contributors to our total cost of ownership. So by monitoring this constantly and continually improving and iterating on what we've built, we've really got our runtimes and costs down even lower than that first graph that I showed you. So at the minute, our runtime is about 700 milliseconds to price a bill, and it's about 0.1 cent per bill. So those are massive time savings for the business, massive cost savings as well. So what have we enabled and what have we learned from this whole process? So by utilizing this trinity of serverless first mindset, coupled with event-driven architecture and domain-driven design, we were able to really unlock such major efficiencies and cost savings through true agility and through fast-paced development. And it really helped us to propel the business forward and accelerate growth while also collaborating directly with those business teams. And we learned that us as developers can truly affect change in a business. Normally, there's people in the middle who are translating requirements from either side, but really the most straightforward path is for the business and the developers to just work directly together. And in doing that, we also felt empowered to push back and sort of question things that were being proposed and whether it was in the best interest of everyone involved. And it meant that nothing was really lost in translation. We were able to share our ideas, share requirements, and create what really works for everyone. And it helped us to break down those silos and boundaries that exist in a traditional business. And instead, we worked as one cohesive team and strengthening everyone's domain knowledge across the company. And finally, how we can continue our growth by enabling the organization. So billing is just a small part of GP, but it means that other teams have been able to see our progress, hear about our journey, and they can reenact it in their own spaces. Like I said, we've encouraged that closer connection with developers in the business, created a more cohesive company, building what works for our customers. We've reduced our operational overhead on our TCO, means we've increased our speed to respond to opportunities, and we can continue that momentum into the future. And our continued focus on things like domain-driven design, event-driven architecture, serverless first, and the well-architected pillars are absolutely key to unlocking true agility at GP. And so with that, I just want to say thank you so much for listening to our journey here at GP. I hope you can take some sort of inspiration or empowerment from it and make it work in your own organization. If anyone has any thoughts or questions, my team and myself will be around for the rest of the day, and we're more than happy to chat about it. So thank you so much.